Live from America's heartland, this is the Daily Truth Report with your host, Noah Christopher.
Hello, welcome back to the Daily Truth Report. I'm your host, Noah, and I've got two brand new guests today that I'm really excited to talk with. On the screen is from rescuethefosters.org. On the top left is Sylvia Beachy, and on the bottom is Kajal Emmett, who goes by KK. And I'm so excited to have you both on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yes. Well, we've got a lot of good stuff to talk about. We're talking about the foster care system, the CPS, the Child Protective System in the United States, and in each state has their own version of that. I got introduced to Sylvia and KK through my interview with Mark and Terry Stamen, which we did a couple weeks ago. You can find that on this channel. I'll put a link to it down below. But they experienced their story is some pretty severe abuses from the system and having their kids actually taken away. So today we're going to talk about a couple people that are looking to either reform the system or totally abolish it, because we've got some really bad things happening. So I'm going to let them tell their story. Sylvia, why don't we start off with you? I'd love to hear a little bit of your background, what your history is, and then how you got involved in what you're doing here. So please, looks like you're muted, but let's get you unmuted, and I'd love to let you take it away.
Thank you. So I have my dog drinking right behind me, so I hope you don't hear it.
You're good.
So basically, I have 5 years of working in the foster system. I started out working as a staff member at a group home called Elks Aid More, which is where I met KK. And I had no previous experience of working in the foster system. So I started out as a staff member. You don't need an education, like you don't need a social work degree or anything like that. You don't even need any type of education. And then I enjoyed working with the kids, and I moved on to obtaining my bachelor's in social work at the University of Georgia. And I moved over to case managing, and my title was family consultant. And then I moved over after that. I went to transportation, behavior aid, and parent aid. So I've had lots of different experiences, but in each of those fields, I realized that it was very difficult to help the child. It is more about the funding, the policies and procedures, and most of that was quotas. And this was a huge pressure on us as a case manager, that we had quotas where we had to maintain children in the foster system. And if there were children that were reunited with their family or adopted, then we were told that we had to bring in more kids. And this was a huge pressure to where that if we did not bring in more kids, we were told that we would be fired. So this was why I left the system. But people need to realize that the system is not safe for children. And I'll let KK speak about her experience of living in the foster home, living in the foster homes and group homes, and her experience. But we think that we take a child from an abused home and we place them in a safe environment, and that's not the case. What we are doing, even if the child is being abused, we're taking them from an abused place and putting them in a different abused environment that is probably worse than what we removed them from.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. You said something that was really important. You said this is not a safe system. And, it's so funny. So many times, something I've learned, the more I've gotten into covering all the news and covering government and covering politics and all this stuff, is whatever they name something or whatever they tell you it is, it's almost always the reverse. I mean, think about it. The Patriot Act, one of the least patriotic things that's ever happened to our country. Remember the Affordable Care Act?
Yeah.
It priced everybody out of healthcare, and you couldn't afford it. And so what do they call this? They call it Child Protective Services. So without knowing anything else about it, that's red flag number one to me, to know that this probably isn't protecting any children. And so, KK, I'd love to hear your story about that. Sylvia comes from working in the system and thinking she was going to be able to make a difference, and she couldn't. You were in the system. I'd love to hear your story about what you experienced.
Thank you. So basically, the reason why I'm a kind of talk more about my beginning stage of where I came from, it takes a part of how I got in the system. So basically for me, I was born in India. I don't exactly know what age I was, but I was found by the cops in India, in New Delhi, India. And so basically what happened was he found me wandering the streets and riding on trains and things like that. And he brought me in and took me into an orphanage. And, you know, I didn't know the kids and things like that. But sooner or later, I got adopted by an American family. And so I came here once I turned 4, at least that's what I was told. And then from 4 to about 15, I was with my adopted family. And I was, staying with them for a while. And then that's when I got abused by my adopted brother. He's not my biological brother. And I was going through that. When I mean by abuse, I mean by sexual abuse. And so that was going on for a couple of while, like for probably about maybe 2 or 3 years, I want to say. I never really spoke up about it or told my adoptive family about it because I would think that they wouldn't believe me or I would just be lying or making things up. And also, even though I was getting abused, I still loved my brother and I didn't want to put him in harm. But it just got to the point where I had to tell, and I had to tell people from my church, and also my parents. So, that came around. I ended up telling the truth. Of course, I was running away because, I just felt like my parents didn't really care and they didn't really do a whole lot to really, when that situation happened, is what I mean. So after that, because I kept running away, that's when I really got involved with DFACs or CPS, whatever you really want to call them. And they're like, well, if you keep running away, we're going to put you in foster care. And as a young teenager, I'm not thinking about that. I'm just thinking about having a place where I feel safe, where I'm not going through that traumatic experience. So I kept running away, and then they put me in foster care. And the first thing that people don't realize is when you get in foster care, especially if you already had like a history of running away or different charges, which really are not necessary, you end up going to DJJ. So I had to end up going through DJJ first, and I was locked up for a little bit. I got out, and then they put me in a foster home, and I was on house arrest and all that different type of things. And then me being in the foster care system, I've just realized that, you know, uh, it's very twisted, I will say. Like you could be doing the right thing as a kid, but you will still get the blame for it. Like you speaking up, like for an example, one of my stories was I was trying to tell the girls like, hey, stop doing that, like stop trying to get the house shut down and all these different type of things. And I was trying to encourage them to not do that. And what ended up happening was it backfired on me. And the foster parent thought that I was the one encouraging them to get her house shut down, which really I was doing the exact opposite. I was actually trying to tell them to stop doing that. And so it got backfired on me and I ended up having to move out. And it's another thing that people don't realize is the foster parent, they lie to you about you moving. They'll say, "Oh, your case manager's coming to pick you up to take you to an appointment," and also, matter of fact, also pack your bags. So to me, it's like, well, why am I packing my bag if I'm going to a appointment? So that doesn't make any
Mhm.
sense. So because of that, I end up still having to pack my bag, and then my case manager picked me up, and she ended up telling me the truth that yeah, you're getting moved. And it's like, wow, like why couldn't you just tell me that from the get go? So yeah, that was my first experience seeing foster parent backfiring on the kid, CPS lying to you, or foster parents lying to you, and then they tell you the truth whenever you get to a new placement. And that's a lot of what people don't realize is what happens if the system is lying goes on, people not telling the truth. And then another thing is a kid will get stabled. Once they get stabled, they don't like to, they don't like, what is what I'm trying to say is being moved because they get stabled in an environment. So in foster care, you're always going to a different place, to a different place, and a different place. So you never have stability, is what I'm trying to say. You're always on survival mode where you get to a place, then you get moved, then you go to another place. And the same with the having therapy. That's why I didn't really like having therapy because you would move so much and you would have so many different therapists. You would have to start all over again, make the new therapist, talk about your problems. But it never really got to the point where you really talk about your problems and things like that. And so going back to what Sylvia was saying, yeah, I was in the group home. I did stay at Elks Aid more. And that is where I witnessed more things. girls getting pimped out, girls running away, they get sex trafficked, a lot of fighting. And I do believe that they do push the LGBTQ on the kids because I experienced that. It kind of confused me on like, well, do I like girls or do I like or not? But see, I knew the truth, but they pushed that on the girls because you're around so many girls. And when you're around so many different girls, that's what you built accustomed to, if that makes sense. Then you're gonna start liking different girls and all these different things because that's what they push in the foster care system. And yes, I ran away a lot of the times because I got tired of dealing with CPS or tired of going through all these different court days or different meetings and nothing really getting resolved. And so a lot of the reason why kids run away is because they're tired of, feeling like they're not nurtured or they're not cared for, they don't have the love, or, a lot of other things that kids go through in the system that I went through too was you don't even know half the time who your case manager is because a lot of times there's a lot of high turnover rates. Your case manager will be your case manager in 1 minute, then the next minute they're not your case manager. And sometimes you don't even know until, you know, a new case manager steps in. So that they also have to deal with that. And so that's really a little bit of my experience. Yeah.
Yeah, very KK, very powerful story, and that's why we're so excited to have both of you on today to give you a voice to be able to tell that story. Sounds like for so many years you didn't have a voice, and now you're taking action and doing things like this to come out and tell your story. So one incredibly powerful. Thank you for sharing that. We'll come back to you in a little bit too, but Sylvia, I want to go back to you. Talk a little bit about, I mean, that's amazing to hear from a firsthand experience of what is experienced. And I think we've all heard stories like that or little bits and pieces, but to really hear the total scope of it about what, year after year that you experience is really a very powerful thing. But Sylvia, tell us about, I want to talk more about the money and how the money corrupts things and the quotas. And this is a system, my understanding is that is a system that really incentivizes these workers, social workers, to put more kids in social care. And so it sounds like it's not about what's best for them. It's about how many numbers can you get in there and how can you meet your quotas. And if that's the incentive of the system, then that's going to be ripe for abuse. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Please go ahead and tell us what you've experienced.
Yeah. So you're exactly right. And so the quota, so a case manager, every case manager has to apply for what's called waivers for when a child comes in care. And the waivers are based on the behaviors of the child. So like a base child is a child that doesn't have as much trauma, doesn't have any behavior problems. They're going to be pretty compliant, easy to control, basically. And those kids, your lowest, and this is probably changed since I've been in the system. It's probably gone up, especially with inflation. But it was like $135 per day per child, and then the more the behaviors of the child, the more money you get. So if they are what we call MWO, where they need more care, so those are going to be your runners. Like KK is a runner, so she would be a behavior child. So she would get more money. So those are going to be like $200 per day. Then you have your sex trafficked victims. So, and sexually abused also. So sexually abused are more difficult to stable out because of their trauma, right? So they need more money. So, sex trafficked, your runners, your self-harm, your defiant kids, those are going to get more money. And then this was also something that we were encouraged to do as well. And that is to put in bad behaviors, right? Because if a child is being defiant and needs more care, they get more funds. So when you apply for that waiver, you have to put in there, this child needs more care. They're running away, they're stealing, they got all these behaviors. So that was part of what a case manager does. So they apply for the waivers. Once that money is approved, then placement agents. So this is something else that people do not understand. Our system is privatized. And what that means is this is nonprofit organizations. So I worked for a place called Elts Aid More. That is a nonprofit organization that has a placement foster side and then a group home foster side. So, and that's because the state gives Title IV funding to these placement agencies, so they get more money. So say a child that's getting, the agency will get like 200 per child, they'll give 60 of that dollars to the foster parent, and then keep the rest. So your foster parent, it was a therapeutic agency, so you can't have more than 3 kids in a home at the same time because they have behavior issues. So, but a foster parent that has 3 kids in their house is making close to $6,000 a month. Now, this was more than what we were making as a case manager, because case managers are low paying. It's like 30, anywhere from 30, 35 a year. So what they do is they get the foster parent $60, keep the rest, right? Then you have quotas. So our quota, and I started printing this off because it was just mind-boggling to me that we had quotas on kids to keep them in care. And we were told you had to bring them in and maintain them in the homes. So they don't like reunification. So this was kind of where the money goes. Did I answer all of that, or did you want me to?
No, that's great. It's a stunning amount. So you said 3 kids could be as much as $6,000 a month coming in. So this really becomes a business. And I do want to pause for a moment, and maybe you can address this too. We never want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I assume there are good people in the system trying to make a difference. Talk about the people actually trying to make a difference, whether it's on it sounds like that's your history on the social worker side. And I'm sure there's probably good families trying to make a difference. How tough is it for someone who really wants to come in and actually do a good job? How tough is it for them to even deal with the system?
Well, it's very tough. And you bring up a good point, because there are good case managers, there are good foster parents. I had very good foster parents that I worked with. I will tell you, there was fewer good foster parents than not, but there are good ones. But what I found was, when I reported an incident, because incidents cause investigations, right? So they don't like investigations. So whenever you report an incident, they want to basically word it so that there is no investigation. So if you are wording it to where, like, telling the truth most of the time, or if you bring it to their awareness, they don't really like that. So you're retaliated against. So I have about 4 write-ups. All of them have to do with, and it would be too much to tell in this episode, but they all have to do with me going to a higher power and saying, this happened, and this is not right. And I would get written up on a medical error. I think I have 3 or 4 medical error reports. And then I was also placed on leave twice, one for 3 days, one for 30 days. And the 3-day was because I refused to falsify documentation on an incident report where the foster child told me that a foster parent had laid hands on her. And I was brought into a meeting. I was told that I was hallucinating, that I was overworked, I was burnt out, and I needed to take a few days off. The 30-day was just to prove a point, because I was not compliant to their standards. But this is what happens to the workers that are trying to make a difference. And then, as KK was saying, the workers' turnover is like, so, and I think it's done on purpose, to be honest with you, because the turnover rate, I think the maximum amount a case manager stays is 2 years. And that's because of the environment that they're placed in.
Yeah, very good. You said something before we hit record on this interview that I want to go back to, because I think it was so powerful. You said, and I don't want to misquote you, but I think you said, the system is set up for human trafficking and the taxpayers are funding it all. Can you dig into that a little bit more? That's an incredible statement.
Yeah, so we are actually, so Title IV funding is it's taxpayer money. We are funding this. It comes from the Social Security, and basically the quota system that is set up. So what we're doing is we are human trafficking kids. And it's really set up and income based for a lot of people, because you've got the foster parents, you've got the case managers, not, then you go into the mental health portion of it, and you got therapists, you got psychiatrists, you got psychotropic medication, not to mention the contractors for the transporters, with the supervised visits and transporting kids. So you've really set up like perfected a system, and these kids are the product, right? So that's kind of what I discovered.
Yeah, incredible. KK, can you speak to that a little bit? What have you seen in terms of kids getting shipped around, even to the level of trafficking and so forth? What was your experience been?
Well, for me, I mean, I don't have like too much, but like one thing that I did remember, like that I at least witnessed, was one of the girls, she was actually in my class, and like she was in the group home with me, but she was also a part of my class when we went to high school. And I do remember an incident where, like I was trying to like encourage her, like, hey, I don't think it would be a good idea for you to, go with this person or go, because something could happen to you. Like, I don't think it's a good idea for you to run away. And long story short, she ended up running away. And what we found out was she got picked out, and she ended up going, I don't remember exactly what state it was that she got, shipped to. But I do know she did get pimped out, and she was on drugs because yeah, that's what ended up happening. And then luckily, by the grace of God, she was able to come back safe. I don't know exactly how she ended up coming back, but she ended up getting away from the pimp, and she ended up sharing the story. So that's how I witnessed that part. And another thing I do want to talk about is a lot of kids in foster care, they're already aware of, oh, we're just for profit, or you're just doing it for the money. Like a lot of the kids in the foster care, they're very smart. Like they are well known. Like they already know that, oh, you're just doing it for the money because, you can get more money off of us, and, all these different things. So kids in the system are very smart. They know what's going on. And a lot of what happens is they get looked down upon, like, oh, you're like the older people, or some of the foster parents, or the case managers, or people even higher than them will be like, no, don't listen to the kid, they're lying. And that's not the truth. Like the kids are telling the truth, but they're the ones that are being told that they're liars and don't listen to them. So I think that is another thing we need to really focus on is kids are not lying. They're telling the truth. You sit there and talk to a kid, they're going to tell you what's going on. And so yeah, that's a little bit of what I experienced. And even for me, like when I felt like my rights were being taken away, I would tell them like, no, you're not doing this to me. Like for an example, like a psychological that I had to do, I fought them on that because I was like, I don't need to keep going through this, because all it does for me, it traumatizes me, because you're just wanting me to take the psychological, to put me on medication and just get more money. And it's not helping me. It's traumatizing even more because I have to go back and look at this paper and be like, wow, I have bipolar disorder, or I have a personality disorder. And really, that's not the case. That's not. You don't have any type of disabilities or disorders. They make it seem like CPS or defects, whatever you want to call them. They and I'm not going to say all of them, okay, but I'm talking about the ones that are, doing it for the wrong reasons. They make you look like, you're crazy, but you're not. So yeah, that's really what I wanted to share.
Yeah, thank you. So inspiring to hear you talk about this, KK, and just incredible. You are clearly a powerhouse, and you're going to make a huge difference. And I'm so glad that you've partnered up with Sylvia on this new mission. Our guests today are Sylvia Beachy and Kajal Emmett, who goes by KK, and they're with the group RescueTheFosters.org. And I believe this is a fairly new group, Sylvia. Yeah, I think you said you started just in January. But you're off to an amazing start. We're so excited to have you on this show to start getting your message out. I mean, I'm just inspired sitting here as I listen to KK talk, and it's very clear that I'm sure there's a lot of people just like her in this system that are being told they have problems, or being told they need to be on medication, when really they're world changers, and they should just be empowered to go out and really do something like she's doing here. So I love that. Sylvia, I'd like to go back to you for a minute and talk a little bit about the mission of this new group, Rescue the Fosters. And I want to tie it maybe back to Mark and Terry Stamen, who I talked to a couple weeks ago. your mission, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but your mission seems to be either to reform the system or to abolish it. And then I also want to talk about your mission, maybe to people. You sent me a summary of your mission. You said, we strive to keep families together. Talk about, and that was Mark and Terry's story. They didn't need to be in the foster care system. They had their children taken from them. So tell me a little bit about keeping families together and how that ties into everything.
Yeah, so Rescue the Fosters, like KK said, they're considered liars. The foster youth are considered liars. So we have like 3 different parts. So one is to give the foster youth in care a voice, also to be an advocate for them. So that's the foster side. And then also to keep families together, because what we were finding is that when you have quotas, then you have reasons to pull kids that don't need to be taken. And what I always say is that we need less kids in the care, not more. So if we can keep the families together, that would start with helping less kids be in the system, right? But instead, they're tearing them apart. So Rescue the Fosters is an advocacy for families fighting CPS. And this is where I've received the most calls, is case managers falsifying documents, lying in court to keep the kids. And we become an advocacy for them. Because I was a case manager, I know how to work a case plan. I know how to achieve reunification. So that's another part of it. And then also when the kids age out of the system, this is something else that people don't realize, is that they are actually dropped on the streets. So a lot of our foster youth are living on the streets. So that's what we want to ensure, that they're not living on the streets, that they can get housing, a job, so we're going to offer resume writing, interview skills, clothing for interviews, just to help kids get out of the system, because they're so conditioned to the system that they end up going from foster care to prison. And we just want to stop that pipeline.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Fantastic. I've also been looking at your website, and I'd love to talk a little bit about your mission, about your, are you a nonprofit? How are you set up?
Yes, we are a nonprofit.
Okay, so I want everyone to, if you want to write this down, rescuethefosters.org, and I'm on your website right now taking a look at it. Like you said, it's brand new. You do have on here annual budget 65,000, raised so far 48,000.
Oh yeah, that's not correct. We've raised, sorry, we're still working on that. We've raised probably like $100.
Okay.
Yeah. So that one's not, that part is not correct. We do need funds, because we are having, if we could do this full time right now, we're having to work jobs in order, to maintain income. But yeah, that's our goal, is to, and we are on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and we do have Cash App. And so if anyone wants to donate, but yeah, it's basically right now, and I apologize because we're still setting up the website.
Sure. So the website's brand new, so that, and it looks great, by the way, but you're still working on getting everything updated. So that's, I totally understand it. When you're brand new, you're still building things out. So, but if people, I'm inspired by your message. I didn't know a lot about you before we got on this interview, and that's why I love doing these, is to learn more about what's going on, and people like you and KK who are truly making a difference in the world and changing things. So I'm not involved with your organization. I have no vested interest, other than I've been inspired on this interview by both of you. So what if people did want to donate to you? You said you're on Cash App. There's a link on your website, Rescue the Fosters. And you said right now you're both working your current jobs and kind of doing this on the side. Tell me briefly, what would donations allow you to do? What's your goal? Where would the money go? How would it be applied? What kind of impact would it have if people wanted to donate and support your mission?
Well, it would give us an opportunity to work on cases all day, every day. So, like, it takes time to be in court for families, and also with like keeping kids off the streets, we really need to start giving to the kids and helping them stay off the streets. So some of the things that they might need, and this is something that people don't realize, is that they might just need IDs. to get a job. So that money would just be going to getting their ID or whatever they need to get off the streets. We did have one youth. He was like, if I could just get an ID, I don't have any documentation. I don't have my birth certificate. I don't have, anything like that. So it costs to get a birth certificate, an ID, anything like that. And right now that is coming out of our pockets, basically. But yeah, so I mean, there's so much that we could do with funds, of course, with just helping the kids. And all of ours would go, at some point we do want to be able to have an income so that we can do this full time. But
Yeah,
starting out, that's going to be a minute.
Very good, very good. And the irony is this is what organizations like CPS should be doing, and instead it's become corrupted. So of course, leave it to the private sector and people like you to jump out and start this and just jump in and actually make a difference, which is fantastic. Well, I'm very inspired by your mission. Are you nationwide focused? Are you focused more in a certain region or state? Tell me where you're having the biggest impact right now.
Well, we are receiving calls all across the U.S. We're located in Georgia, but the majority of my calls are coming from California. California is really messed up. In fact, I have a group of people. Right. But no, our calls have come from California, Maine, New Mexico, South Carolina, Indiana, Florida, Georgia. Georgia's really messed up too. But a lot of calls from California.
Are you experiencing, I was also really inspired and saddened by the story of Mark and Terry Stamen. Are you experiencing other stories like them where children have been taken out of good homes?
Absolutely. And it's more, in fact, Terry's case, nothing was done by procedure. It was all fraud, her case is like so many other ones. But yes, that is exactly what we're finding, is that caseworkers are falsifying documents. They're lying under oath, and their word is the Bible when it comes to the court and it comes to the judge, and they're just getting away with it.
Terrible.
Mm-hmm.
What else? This has been a tremendous chat, and I've really enjoyed it. I don't want to wrap it up. If there's anything else on that either of you wanted to get out there, KK, let's go back to you. Is there anything else before we wrap up here that you'd like to leave people with, or any other information you'd like to give? I'd love to have you both back on too, by the way. So we'll have another bite at the apple. But before we wrap up for today, KK, what else would you like to share?
Well, for me, it's really like how I want to make a difference is really just, I'm doing this for the kids in foster care, to be the voice for them. Because, for me, I mean, I pretty much had to be the voice for myself. So I was really good at advocating for myself. And so really, like, I just want to share that, this is for the kids. This is for our children, like, our future children. And, we got to save this country, and children are the most vulnerable. And, we need to care for the kids because, a lot of times what happens is people don't want to talk about this, or they don't really want to deal with it, but we have to, because it's not going to go away if we don't talk about it, if we don't speak up, if we don't go to, the church or different places, the part of the community, or talking about this in the school system or community, because it all plays a role all together, because kids are literally everywhere. And this is not just for kids in foster care. I want to say that for all kids, but my main focus is kids in foster care. But that's really what I want to share. And
no, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. It's amazing that you have such perspective and insight at such a young age, and you have a lot more insight than most everybody we have in Congress right now. So it's people like you that truly can change the world. Well, Sylvia, let's go to you first. What else would you like to share before we wrap up here?
Well, no, KK is right. So, and she does have such insight. And I think that comes from her having to grow up fast. Like, she did not have that childhood that she deserved to have. But that is one thing that I do want to say. This is for the kids. This is not like a business or anything like that. This is more like, you have got to start looking at the foster system, and we have got to start talking about it. There needs to be, right now there's like a taboo, like, oh, don't talk about the foster system or whatever, but we've got to start talking about the issues in order to make change.
One question, follow up on what KK said. You mentioned churches and local organizations. Are there organizations out there like churches or like local other local nonprofits that you're finding success in working together with that maybe have less corruption, or where are you finding success in those areas?
Well, so for me, like I actually am already a part of the church. I basically what I do right now is I share my podcast. I send them the link if they want to, listen. They do, they can, and so like that's one way I'm trying to, tell the people from the church. I'm also working with my pastor, his wife. We're working on like different funds and things like that. So, and also really just talking about it. I share my testimony. Like that's really how I get the word out. And, I've also shared my testimony at a different church. And then not only that, the other part of what I'm trying to do is, I don't know if you're aware of revival that's been happening at Asbury College. I'm trying to, my church, we're trying to bring that to GGC, which is my old college that I used to go to. So like that is another part of where I'm trying to also talk about the foster care system and things like that. So, that's really what I'm doing. And, tablings and things like that, talking about the foster care system.
Oh, that's so good. I love it. I have just been so honored to be able to talk with both of you and to play a small role in getting your story out. You're brand new. I think you're going to grow very fast. We'd like to do everything we can to support you, and we will try to amplify your story and get it out to as many people as we can. We will have you back on if you'd be willing to come back on in the future. We'd love to have you back on. Before we wrap up, I just want to tell everybody it's rescuethefosters.org. And I really have no personal connection to the foster care system. So this is something that I've stumbled into by talking to Mark and Terry Stamen and then now talking to you. But I have to tell you, both of you are so incredibly inspiring. And this does seem like an area that there's so many areas right now that are full of corruption, but this is certainly one of them. And this is one that directly affects and KK, we heard how it twists and really hurts the kids. So that probably not a lot of things more important than this. So rescuethefosters.org. You're on Twitter, you're on Instagram, you're on Truth Social. You can just search for Rescue the Fosters. Looks like on Twitter it's just Rescue Fosters. And then Cash App is Rescue the Fosters if you want to donate, or I think there's a donate link on the website. So I want to thank you both for coming on, and I'd love to have you back on soon. Keep doing great things, and we'll get an update from you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.